And again, this goes right through our lab manual, just right down the line. What's the definition of anatomy? What's the definition of physiology? Again, we're looking at the study of structure. When we talk about anatomy, that's what is it? Physiology is how does it work? How does it work is chemistry stuff. So we don't do a heck of a lot with physiology. We do some functional work. It's hard to talk about anatomy and what is it without talking about how does it work. But our focus is going to primarily be on structural aspects. We're going to look a little bit at microanatomy, that's like cells and tissues. We'll look a little bit at at gross anatomy, which is going to be organ level and organ system level. Okay. Regional and systemic anatomy. Okay. We'll look at these are body systems or organ systems. That's what systemic means. The whole organism. So again, regional anatomy, if we're just talking about a body region. So the cranial region, right, or the cervical region, or the neck region, right? The thoracic or chest region, abdominal region, pelvic region. So those are the regions. So this is very basic foundational stuff. So what we're talking about in week 1, if I don't expect you to get all those terms etched in and you remember them forever. We build on those. You'll see these terms every week. So that's the beauty of this course, is that we're continually, we don't just get through a unit and throw it away, go to the next one, get through that, throw it away, right? Like you do in math. Sometimes you just get through a chapter and you'll never see that formula again. You'll get there, or English, you get through a short story and an essay, boom, done with it, never see it again. That's not the case here. This is all connected. It's all interconnected. When we're talking about medial and lateral, anterior, posterior, ventral, dorsal, caudal, cranial, when we're, those are terms, we'll see them and hear them over and over throughout the semester. So, okay. So then once you get into your vet tech courses, that's just second language. You're basically learning Latin and Greek this semester. All of these words are Latin and Greek based. So you're kind of learning foreign languages a little bit. And how do you learn a foreign language? Repetition, right? So it's not quite that intense. We don't have to know verb tenses and things like that of the foreign language. We just need to know names. And a lot of them you've heard before, just in your general life. Systemic anatomy. So this is how we study this semester. The first 12 weeks or so are system by system. So we do the integumentary system actually first, the skin, and hair and nails. And then we get into skeletal and muscle, and then kind of keep going. Okay, so week by week, we'll be doing body systems. Okay, talking about organs within those systems. So terminology, this is really what we're focused on, like I said, throughout the semester. Getting you used to the medical terminology and primarily the anatomy of our different animals. So we look at planes. Why are planes important? What would we use this for in the clinic potentially? Yeah, like imaging stuff. Good, like x-rays or MRIs. I don't know how many dogs are getting MRIs. They exist, but yeah, x-rays especially, for sure. Do we want a frontal or a dorsal view, a sagittal view? Yeah. The sagittal and median planes are in essence the same. They're dividing into left and right sections. So the median one though goes right down the middle, but it still divides the animal into left side and right side, but exact halves. Whereas the sagittal could be anywhere else along, so we could look at, maybe we want to just look at a portion over here of the animal. That's still going to be a sagittal plane. It's just not down the middle. We even call the middle one the mid sagittal sometimes. So, but anyway, And a median, you know that in regular speak, right? If you're driving down the road or on the highway, the median is in the middle, right? Divides left and right, or divides east and west, or north and south. Okay. Transverse is going to cut the animal into front and back sections. Transverse foot. So if the dog stands up on his hind legs, he looks like he's bipedal. That's the same transverse plane that we have too. We call it the horizontal plane or the transverse plane. Divides for him front and back. For us, it would divide us from top to bottom. And then the last one we need to divide is dorsal and ventral. So we call that the dorsal plane. For us, it would be, if we stood up on our hind legs, it would divide us from front to back. Well, that's what dorsal means, is back. We call, ours is called a coronal, like a coroner, coronal or frontal plane. Again, you'll notice in the book, and myself, we'll discuss human and animal, both terminology. Primarily focus on animals, but of course. Couple of positioning aspects, right? Ventrodorsal or dorsal-ventral. Again, dorsal is on the back of the dog or the animal. Ventral is going to be their belly. So the first term tells us what we're looking at. So ventrodorsal means we're looking at the ventral aspect, and he's lying on his dorsal aspect. So the first combining form, ventro, relates to what we're viewing. So if dorsoventral is first, that means we're looking at the back or the dorsal aspect. Oftentimes, in your book talks about it too. I thought I put a slide. Call it recumbency. So this would be like ventral recumbent, dorsal recumbent. So they're starting to kind of eliminate some of the combo terms because they can be confusing. But again, veterinarians some are old, they've been around a long time, and so they were taught this. The newer ways is talking about recumbency. We just say we're getting a ventral view. We're getting a dorsal view. But anyway, we cover it all because you never know what you're going to see in the clinic. Okay. Ventrodorsal. This is just telling me I'm looking at the ventral aspect. And he's lying on his back. Dorsal ventral means I'm looking at the dorsal aspect. And he's lying on his belly. Okay. Then we have lateral recumbency. So you have right lateral if they're laying on the right side, left lateral if they're laying on the left side. And again, right and left are the animals, right and left. Okay. Cranial and caudal. Cranial, of course, means toward the head. Caudal means tail or toward the tail. Notice it's a slightly different when we look at the legs. Think of like the legs as they'd be laying out like this. So if the legs are out, so like what they're pointing at too, this would be the dorsal aspect. Here, let me pull that up. So caudal toward the tail. So this would be like the back. Cranial toward the head. that's all animals, or all four-legged vertebrates. Yep. Rostral is another new term maybe for you. That means toward the nose or the snout. Rostrum means nose. Like rhino means nose as well. Humans don't have that as a feature. We have a nose, but we don't have a muzzle or the snout. So generally we just think of cranial. This whole thing for us is cranial. For an animal, it's cranial and rostral. Okay. And again, with any of these animals. And again, dorsal means toward the back. Okay. Think of like a fish, right? Like the dorsal fin of a fish. And then ventral is toward the belly. Oh, this is the one. So like if an animal lays puts their feet underneath them and their legs out, their arms out forward. Okay. So this would be the dorsal aspect of their legs. Think of them as laying like this. So this is the dorsal aspect, even though it's facing toward the front, anterior, we still call it the dorsal aspect. A little bizarre with animals, but we think of them as laying down on their bellies with their arms straight out. So the ventral portion, well, they don't show it, but the ventral portion would be then back here. Medial means we're talking about something toward the middle or toward the midline, that median plane. Lateral means away from the middle or away from the center. Oftentimes we'll talk about these terms as they relate in a comparable way. So we may say the ear is lateral to the nose. So the ear is further from the midline than the nose. Like the ear is the most lateral aspect for us, for humans. The eyes are medial to the ears, meaning the eyes are closer to the middle than the ears are. So we'll oftentimes use these directional terms as how they relate to or compare to other terms. Superficial or external has to do with what's on the surface. So we'd say, for us, the integumentary of the skin is most superficial, when then the bones would be the deepest. When we next week we'll get into skin layers a little bit, tissue layers. So we'll talk about specific layers of tissue, and we'll refer to them as being deep or superficial to one another. We say a layer is superficial to another layer, it means that layer is closer to the surface. So like when we're talking about the skin, the epidermis would be the superficial layer. The dermis would be the deeper layer. So, and then there's even layers of those too that we'll get into. Proximal and distal, usually we only use those with the appendages of the animal and how they relate to each other or to different parts on that appendage. So these are comparing terms that on the same appendage. So we're talking about, the hoof or the talus or the tarsus area versus, the shoulder area. We'd say the shoulder is most proximal, meaning it's closest to the trunk or the body relative to the knee or the ankle or the feet or the toes or whatever. So this is most distal. So we'd say the hoof is distal to the knee, meaning the hoof is the furthest distance from where the appendage connects to the animal. So we only use proximal and distal when we're on the same appendage, comparing parts on that appendage. So we'll be comparing the same two parts. We'll use my arm for example. So the elbow and the wrist. The elbow is proximal to the wrist. That means the elbow is closer to my body attachment than my wrist. And then I could say the wrist is distal to my elbow. So I'm comparing the same two things, it's just how I'm saying which one's coming first. So the wrist is distal, it's the further than my elbow. My elbow is proximal to my wrist. So those are probably the couple of the trickier ones for directional terms. Palmar and plantar. Palmar is going to be like us, it's the front, kind of the front appendages. Plantar is going to relate to their hind appendages, but at their feet, right? This is our palms, the same as the animal. They call our feet, when we like plant your feet, or there's something you maybe heard of, plantar warts. Some people get little warts or corns on their toes. But plantar has to do with, for us, it's our feet. For the animal, it's their back appendages at their feet. So they have palms, in essence, their front legs. Okay. Palmar versus plantar. Okay. And then a couple other items too. And again, these can apply to any mammals. We could use wings and feet then. Yep. We wouldn't use those terms. Yep.
Like snake or something.
Yeah, like a snake, probably they're not going to have palmar or plantar. May, now that I think about it, some of these may only really apply to males. I'll ask John. He's my vet, my vet. My background, I'm human, so my background, I'm a biologist, but all of my clinical background, for the most part, been with humans. Orthopedics is what my background was in. I've been teaching A&P at colleges and biology since 2000. Primarily, again, human biology, human anatomy and physiology. So I have an in-house veterinarian that I refer to for some questions like that. Because I'm not 100% sure. But I think logically speaking, yeah, we could probably conclude that, yeah, certain animals are not going to have palmar or plantar. All right, let's see. So needless to say, I'm going to be learning a few things along the way too. I usually do anyway. Even when I teach human stuff that I've been teaching for 20 some years, I still learn a few things from there. But this is definitely going to be, there'll be a little more learning for me this semester as well. Okay, withers and barrel. Withers kind of, again, the shoulder area, I suppose. Okay. And then barrel, you've heard that, like a barrel chest or something, And the flank, kind of the, kind of like the groin area, or the hips, hip and groin. And then, of course, the brisket, that front, kind of the sternal region. Poll, that's where the ears connect to the head. P-O-L-L, poll. Then, of course, the muzzle. Their snout. Tail head, that's where the tail connects to the body. Tail head. Brachium has to do with their arm. Brachial means arm. So this would be kind of like their humerus area, their upper arm. So like a horse and a dog, their elbows are right here. They generally, we see like the femur and the brachium or the humerus of four-legged animals are quite a bit shorter relative to the rest of the appendage. Whereas their forearms or forelimbs are quite a bit longer. They have really long ankles and wrists, right? Our wrists are 8 little bones right here. The wrist of the horse, is this whole area here. And then their ankles, this whole area here, really, technically they call it the tarsal area. It's a little more complicated, I think, maybe than we are. And then the knee, and then the stifle, kind of like the hip joint, stifle. Actually, maybe more like kind of a. Well, we'll look. I've got an ultrasound video. We'll watch a vet and a couple of vet techs do ultrasound on the stifle. In 2 weeks, we're going to look at musculoskeletal. So we're going to look at some ultrasound and joint capsules. We're trying to see if we can find any shredding or tears in the meniscus or the cartilage or the ligaments of the joint. The hock and the shin, cannon and fetlock. Those are new terms as well, more than likely for you. Again, we're talking kind of like carpus area, the wrist area. And back by the ankles, and the pastern. Body cavities, our organs are separated from one another. They're connected through nerves and blood vessels, but they are kind of encased in multiple layers of tissue, and we call those cavities. So they're like the brain and spinal cord are in their own cavities. A cavity is like a room, basically. And the room is going to have multiple layers of tissue, and there's usually fluid in between those tissue layers. So our brain, so in other words, like we don't just have our skull and then the brain is just right up against the skull. The brain's kind of floating. There are 3 layers of tissue, fluid-filled layers. We call it the cranial cavity. Like a concussion occurs when the brain passes through those 3 layers and makes contact with the inner portion of the skull. Right? So the dorsal cavities primarily deal with, so the cavities toward the back, primarily with the brain and the spinal cord. And the brain and spinal cord are both connected. But the cavities get different names, the cranial cavity and then the spinal cavity. Okay? The ventral cavities are going to be where the guts are located in essence. The thorax and the abdomen. The thorax is going to be where we primarily would find the lungs, as well as the heart's kind of in its own little cavity called a mediastinum. But for the most part, we'd say the heart is part of the thoracic cavity as well. And then there'll be a diaphragm that distinguishes the thoracic from the abdominal cavity. So this diaphragm is a muscular wall that completely separates these 2 cavities. The only thing, we've got certainly, we have to get blood from the heart back here. So there's going to be a puncture where blood vessels go through the diaphragm. We have to get food, right? Somehow food goes from the mouth to the anus. So we have to be able to pass food through this area, certainly. So in fact, the stomach is the first organ just past the diaphragm into that abdominal cavity. So we'd have the esophagus or your food tubes taking food from the mouth there. So there's going to be another hole in the diaphragm where the food tube is going to pass through. But for the most part, this diaphragm is a complete wall distinguishing thoracic cavity from abdominal cavity. Okay? it's pretty fascinating. The lungs attach, you know, to the more the anterior portion, the top of the diaphragm. The lungs are in membranous sacs as well, called pleura. But those sacs are attached to the diaphragm. And the diaphragm is like an umbrella shape, kind of a dome shape when it's relaxed. And it's actually the pulling of the diaphragm that causes the lungs to expand. And what that does is creates greater volume, lower pressure, and air moves from high pressure to low pressure. So as soon as I expand the volume of the lungs, the pressure decreases, causing the air pressure, which is always consistent, to be higher than the air pressure here. So air just goes naturally into the lungs. So we're not breathing's kind of passive for the most part, because our diaphragm is constantly kind of doing this. Pulls our lungs open, then we exhale, pulls them open. So yeah, the diaphragm is intrinsically linked to your lungs. So we associate that with breathing. And there's a nerve that actually comes off way up here. There's a nerve that comes off of here that travels all the way down to the diaphragm. That triggers it to keep doing it. So if we have an injury way up here, it could actually cause problems with respiration. Anyhow, well, again, all this stuff we see throughout the semester. So again, some of the major structures of the thoracic cavity, thinking of the heart and the lungs, the esophagus a little bit. And then when we get into the abdominal region, we're thinking of all the digestive organs, the intestines, and the stomach and the intestines. And then certainly we'd find like the liver would be in the abdominal region. And as we travel further, we get into the urinary system. You know, the kidneys are actually outside of the abdomen. They're called retroperitoneal. So the kidneys actually kind of sit outside of this cavity. Kind of, they're the oddball organs. That's why they're very. We have to be very careful with animals, with ourselves, when we're dealing with kind of that low back region, because the kidneys aren't very well protected. They're encased in like a fat capsule, so they do have some protection. They don't have that extra added abdominal double layer of peritoneum that our guts have. So same with us, humans, same way. Kidneys are more exposed than probably any organ in the body, really. So again, those layers that kind of create those membranous linings or layers. Visceral versus parietal layer. Viscera means guts. So if you ever see visceral layer, visceral anything, it's relating to the actual organ. So if this is my heart, or my lung, there's gonna be a layer of tissue right on top of it. That's called the visceral layer. And then there'll be a cavity or a space, and then another layer. So we would say the visceral layer is deep. The parietal layer is superficial. Okay? So for the heart, we call it the pericardium. Maybe heard of that at some point, the pericardium. So there's a visceral pericardium that's right up against the heart. And then there's a parietal pericardium that's going to be more superficial to that. And in between is a cavity called the pericardial cavity. That's where fluid is. Helps with friction reduction, right? The heart's doing this all day. Well, it gets a lot of heat generated. So I put a sac around it with some fluid, double layered sac with fluid that kind of helps with some of the inflammatory aspects. Okay? If the heart isn't doing enough work, we can get fluid build up around the heart. So it's part and parcel. If the heart has to beat to keep the fluid level around the heart regular. If the heart's not beating enough, too sluggish, too slow, too sedentary, that can cause a buildup of fluid around the heart. That could be disastrous, certainly. So the pleura, those are the double layers that surround the lungs. Pleura means has to do with lungs. peritoneum is what's surrounding the guts, the abdominal cavity. Again, a double layer. So parietal peritoneum is going to be more superficial. Visceral peritoneum is going to be right up against the guts. And again, you've maybe heard of pleurisy. Pleurisy is inflammation of the pleura, usually due to, again, hydration issues, fluid imbalances within that cavity. The peritoneum, we have what's called peritonitis. Peritonitis, again, inflammation, usually dehydration issues, overuse, repetitive use. Okay. Just about done. This little area, cells, tissues, organs, and systems. This is generally where we're going to pick up next week. We're going to talk a little bit about cells and a little bit about tissues, and then we'll start in on our first organ system, and that's going to be integumentary, which is your skin, your hair, and your nails. So, anyway, those we'll have cells and tissues next week, and will we see them again throughout the semester? Oh, sure. Some of the terminology, you'll see it again. So, if some of the cell and tissue terms are a little weird, don't worry, we do see them again. But we're going from micro to macro, or from small to big. So cells are small, and there is the level smaller than cells is the chemical level. That's the one we're kind of skipping. We do a little bit with the biochemistry, but that's it. Yeah, cells are, again, the basic unit of life. They have specialized functions depending on what organ they're associated with. So again, we'll get into the details next week. Tissues, we're going to see 4 different tissue types. Okay, these are the 4 tissue types. EPI means upon something, or covering, or lining something. So epithelium is a covering or a lining. So like our epidermis is epithelial tissue. The mucous membranes of our mouths and our throat and back into our esophagus, or our respiratory, our sinuses, those are all lined with epithelium. So if it's a lining or a covering, it's epithelial. So what would that probably do functionally for me? It'd help with protection, right? For one. Okay. We also see some secretions and some other stuff going on, but primarily epithelium is great for protection. Okay. We also see epithelial lining all the way at the deepest areas of our respiratory. We have little tiny air sacs called alveoli, where all the oxygen is ultimately going to get transferred into our bloodstream. So the walls or linings of those little alveoli or air sacs are also epithelium. They're not there for protection. They just happen to be there as kind of the end of one thing and the beginning of another. So anyway, we'll see epithelium comes in a variety of thicknesses and cell types. So like for skin, it's going to be thicker epithelium, providing us thusly more protection. Our fecal, our poop. Oh, like probably 70% of our poop is epithelial lining of our guts. Believe it or not. Connective tissue is the next layer deep to epithelium. So epithelium is always the most superficial layer. And then connective is going to be the group of tissue underneath or deep to epithelium. Connective, by the way, epithelium generally has no blood supply. It's avascular. But just underneath it, that connective tissue, that's where all the blood supply is, all the nerve supply, all the action. Like the dermis of the skin is connective tissue. Okay? So we'll look at different types of connective tissue. Connective tissue is cells contained within a matrix. A matrix is kind of like some sort of external kind of substance. It could be gelatinous, it could be kind of viscous, liquidy, it could be dense and full of fibers. But connective tissue, even bone is a connective tissue. Blood is considered a connective tissue, believe it or not. Blood is cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets inside of a matrix, which would be the plasma. So anyway, and then muscle tissue is going to be deep to that. we'll see skeletal, cardiac, smooth muscle. And then finally, nervous tissue is pretty ubiquitous. It's just all over the body. It's everywhere. It kind of innervates muscle. It innervates connective. So we'll look at tissues and cells in more details next week, or in more detail next week. And then all of those different tissues are going to make up organs. Okay? Organs. And organs are generally, we have single structured organs, of course. We have organs that come in pairs. Organs that are hollow, organs that are solid. All right. So like, so anyway, so the uterus and the bladder, those would be hollow organs. The stomach, the intestines, those are hollow organs. Whereas like the liver and the heart, and the lungs, kidneys, those are solid organs. It's another way of looking at organs. Then we bunch these organs together and they become organ systems. So we call it like, and that's how we approach this class, the first 12 weeks. Integumentary system, musculoskeletal system, nervous system, endocrine system, digestive system, right? Respiratory system. So we kind of compartmentalize the organs and the systems, but ultimately, again, they're all intrinsically linked through nerve and blood and other tissues. Health, health is, of course, we can also call it balance. We call it homeostasis, maintaining health, wellness, right? Well-being. We have ranges, right? So body temperature being around for us, 98.6, respiration rate being around 12 to 18 breaths per minute, blood pressure being a certain acceptable. So we have normal ranges of what this define health, right? If you're not in those ranges, then you're in a state of unease. So they call it dis-ease, right? Disease just means a state of unease. It means you're out of the ranges of homeostasis or normalcy or health. Okay? Some diseases are acute, right? They just creep in and then they're gone. Some are chronic, right? They last a long time. Inflammation's a big one for our animal buddies, right? Especially as they get older, they get arthritis, they've got just chronic kind of inflammation going on. So they're in a state of disease. So as vets and vet techs, our goal is to at least kind of help, if it's an acute disease, we try to treat it and monitor it, and hopefully that's all it is. If it's a chronic disease, then there's maintenance protocols, and we're just trying to treat them. Sometimes it becomes we're treating symptoms, right? We're treating the pain, or we're treating whatever it might be that we think the inflammation. But ultimately, again, we're trying to at least minimize or eliminate as much of the pain and suffering they might be in. So lastly is that homeostasis. So we'll conclude here. Homeostasis is just a fancy word for balance, maintenance of what they call a dynamic equilibrium. So in essence, those are those ranges I just mentioned, right? It's okay to be, around 120 over 80. You don't have to be exactly 120 over 80, for instance, for blood pressure. So there is like a dynamic equilibrium. Stress and stress perception and the result of what we perceive as stress put us out of homeostasis. So if you feel sweating, blood pressure going up, heart rate increasing, those maybe some intestinal or gut things going on, anxiety, those are stress perceptions. That's totally normal. Animals have the same thing going on, right? We don't want to stress them out. They're stressed out enough as it is. Right? So the more they perceive stress, the more likely that they're going to be out of homeostasis. And chronic out of homeostasis leads to disease. Okay? Most disease is either viral, bacterial potential, right? Some of it's just physical, right? Repetitive use or injury. A lot of it for us is perception too, right? How we perceive what's going on around us. So coping skills play a big role. Well, animals, they have coping skills too. So yeah, we don't want animals developing coping skills that are maybe unhealthy for them. Just like we don't want to either. Because what that leads to is potential for chronic disease. One thing it does for sure is it immunocompromises them and us. So we want to maintain balance as much as we can. We want to recognize triggers and respond appropriately. Blood pressure goes up every time you hear a certain word. Well, is that healthy? Probably not. Think of your animals the same way. Every time they hear a certain sound, it sends them into stress. Do we want to keep it there? No, because again, then they're susceptible to a basic virus that our body's already okay with handling. But if we're stressed out and that virus or bacteria hits us, our bodies may not be prepared for it. Okay. So that's the gist of not only homeostasis, but what keeps us busy at the clinic when animals and owners are not in homeostatic ranges that are appropriate. Okay. And again, it's the whole body working together, all of our body systems. Okay. The mind, though, and the brain, certainly in the senses, they're kind of the external, internal linkage system. Okay. So again, that's what we're really going to spend most of our time talking about, homeostasis. We're going to be looking at what are the healthy, normal aspects of each of these organs and organ systems. We'll talk a little bit about disease, but you guys will have plenty of that. That's pretty much what your whole vet tech's program is addressing when we're not in homeostasis. So we'll talk about your foundational stuff. What is homeostasis for the entire body system for any? All right, that's it. Makes life possible. And then these are the key terms for you. And again, all of that information that I went through is going to be in your unit outlines as well. So those definitions and all that info is in your unit outlines, etc. That's it. You guys have any questions? I'm sure you probably have a lot, but any at the moment?